I was doing a presentation to three VPs and our COO at the time. The three VPs were bought into the presentation and kind of already knew what it was. So I was more or less pitching to the COO. Totally fine. I had like 45 minutes, an hour, whatever it was. So I'm up there kind of doing my dog and pony show, presenting. He grabs his phone. He checks his phone for a moment, puts it down and looks up. While he was checking his phone, my intent was to be respectful. He's the COO. Give him a moment to check his email. He's the only person that doesn't know this information. Once he put his phone down, I said, all good? Cool. And I kept doing my thing. After that presentation, I go into the other room. My VP was in the room. He goes, dude, what the hell's wrong with you? Like, why did you do that? He's furious. I'm like, what is he furious about? Like, what did I do? He goes, why'd you pause? And I said, well, I don't know. He was checking his phone. He seems like a busy guy. I just thought he was checking his phone. He's like, oh, he didn't interpret it that way. He's furious with you. I then knew my intent did not match his interpretation. So what did I do? I walked over and went into his office. I said, hey, I think there's a bit of a disconnect here. Here's what I did and why I did it. I recognize you might not have understood it that way. Can you help me understand like what you interpreted? Because that was miles off of my intent. I was only able to do that because I have a general belief of just use your words. To the best of your ability, communicate what your intent is. Even if you kind of fumble through it, even if you talk in circles, communicate your intent. Because sometimes that does not come through.
Welcome to the Perpetual Growth Podcast with Zach Palmer, the show where we explore the strategies, insights, and stories that empower you to grow your business, strengthen your relationships, and elevate your health. Because growth isn't just about what you achieve, it's about who you become along the way. And today, I'm thrilled to welcome Mark Mirra. Mark is the co-founder and CEO of Aligned, where they believe that negotiation should be empowering, not intimidating. With over a decade of experience helping businesses, leaders, and teams tackle their toughest challenges, Mark's witnessed one truth time and again. Negotiation is about people, potential, and progress. And that's why they're on a mission to make negotiation skills accessible to everyone. So let's dive in and take another step on your journey to perpetual growth. So Mark, welcome. I am thrilled to have you here with us today.
Thanks, Zach. Happy to be here.
Excellent, excellent. So if you would, Mark, I would love if you would lead in with just a little bit of your story history. Talk to our audience about where you started in business, what that overall evolution looked like for you. What were some of the big challenges, the successes, maybe some of the major tipping points or milestones that took you from where you were to the success and business that you're now experiencing today.
Yeah, sweet. So, the easiest way is to go back to the beginning, right? So I'll go way back to the beginning because that'll give like a full picture of how I show up. So
perfect.
My parents got divorced when I was like 3-4 years old, but it was a very amicable divorce. So they showed me early on in my life that conflict, specifically divorce from a very Italian town and, Catholics, can be super amicable. That was a huge lesson for me early on. So I observed two people handling conflict in a really collaborative way because I had one goal, I'm an only child, to raise me effectively. Fast forward a couple years, now my mom is not a single mother, my dad was down the street, but I go to mom's work at IBM and I start walking down the halls. I'm 5-6 years old now. All of a sudden, she looks around, she goes, where's my son? I come walking back down the hall with like a handful of money and a few M&Ms. She goes, what did you do? I'm like, well, I got some M&Ms from the vending machine, and I decided the best way for me to get more M&Ms is to sell them individually to all the executives at IBM. So now I got this 5-year-old kid kind of walking down the halls, selling individual M&Ms for like dollars a piece, which I'm realizing I probably should have done my whole career like that. So kind of talking to people, sales has always been something that's been in my blood. Fast forward, I get into kind of middle school, high school. I fall in love with music. I ended up being a drummer, and I fell in love with being on the drum line specifically. So even as a sophomore, I was co-captain of the drum line. Junior, same deal. Senior, now I'm the captain of the drum line. I love teaching, and I liked teaching a skill, music, drumming, that seems pretty intimidating for a lot of people, but you could be do it in an approachable way, in a disarming way. So we ended up growing our drum line from being maybe 15 or so people to by the time I was a senior, there were 40 people on the drum line. And we were a competition winning group all across the country, which was super cool.
Wow.
I thought I was going to go to school to be a teacher. Mm-hmm. But I was also balancing out how do I be a business person as well, because I wanted to sell stuff. I wanted to live on a plane and travel around the world. Mm-hmm. So I get into college. I go to the University of Maryland. I try to get into the business school. I fail calculus, not a numbers guy. And I'm like, maybe I'll just go to the comms program. That seems like a better fit for me. And it honestly was 100% the right decision. Mm-hmm. I learned presentation skills, which I'm a natural presenter. I love engaging audiences, but I also learned crisis communication, conflict management, conflict resolution, and negotiation. It's like all of a sudden these topics are becoming really interesting to me. Mm-hmm. I graduate. I still have this dream to fly around on planes and sell stuff on big stages. But man, the economy was a bit tough when I graduated, so it was hard to find some jobs. So I did some sales roles back and forth in a couple different ways. And finally, I see about a year or so after I graduate, an inside sales role at a negotiation training and coaching firm. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. This sounds really cool. It was paying like nothing. To be fair, but living at home, don't have a lot of responsibilities and bills for the first year or so outside of college. So let me take a stab at this. If I don't like it, I'll quit within a few months and do something else. No big deal. Mm-hmm. I loved it. I was obsessed with it. All I wanted to do was that specific thing. I wanted to sell negotiation. I wanted to teach negotiation. I wanted to do everything related to helping people improve a skill that they're really uncomfortable with. Mm-hmm. So I said yes, and I ended up being there for 9 years. But 9 years was a long time as well. So I started off in inside sales. I got promoted to being a client manager and account manager for our retail practice, making less money. That didn't feel good. But I kept firing through because I knew this is where I wanted to be. I absolutely unequivocally know this is the choice for me. It's my dream job. I can be a teacher in a skill set that's really uncomfortable for people, and I can travel around the world doing it. So I wanted to be a consultant. I wanted to dive into the next area of this business. And I was told repeatedly, you're not going to be a consultant. You'll never be a consultant. You're not going to be a consultant. You'll never be a consultant, over and over and over and over again. Until one day, I simply took it upon myself with some guidance from some other leaders in the business. Why don't you just film yourself running some of these workshops on your own in your apartment? Like, okay, you know what? That's a good idea. Let's put my money where my mouth is. So I started recording myself delivering negotiation training to, I don't know, my wall. Mm-hmm. I walked into the head of the Americas office the next day and I said, it's entirely your decision on whether or not you want to watch this. I think I have the goods to be a consultant. Here's me recording myself. And I put a flash drive down on the table for him. So it's obviously like 12 years ago, or what feels like 12 years ago. Put the flash drive down in front of him. Finally, then I get the opportunity to be a consultant. I kind of broke through that ceiling. I ended up training internal teams. I managed big practices with a significant amount of growth. I kept progressing, won multiple awards internally. And so you hit that ceiling that's a little bit harder than the other ceilings. And it was time for me to leave. So then I thought to myself, I always wanted to build a line. I always had my vision for what negotiation could be. And it could be this collaborative and clear and assertive and professional and nice thing that people do, where you can be demanding and you could also be kind. You could be abrasive when you need to and disarming when you have to. You can do all of these things, and negotiation can be perceived as the most collaborative problem-solving activity in the world. It just needs a bit of a rebrand. So after I left that organization, I spent some time at another software company. I started building a line to the background. Fortunately, after I left, a bunch of former clients came and reached out and said, we'd love to work with you. I said, obviously, non-compete, non-solicit. You got to give me a year, which they did. Fortunately for me, they did. And January 1st, 2023, we turned the lights on. And it's been an absolutely unbelievable ride ever since. We've worked with 150 different companies. We are the preferred partner for all of Berkshire Hathaway. We've worked with sports teams. We eclipsed 7 figures in the first year, and now we're a multi-7-figure organization with 15 people. It's been an unbelievable ride. And when we have clients come to us to learn about negotiation, they say your take is refreshing. It feels more like a lifestyle. It feels approachable. It feels attainable. Mm-hmm. And these are all the things we want people to think about when they think of negotiation, not this necessary evil, not this manipulative activity, but a way in which we can be clear, we can be assertive, and we can be nice at least twice.
Mhm.
That's a little bit about me.
That's beautiful, Mark. Thank you for sharing. There are so many different things that I want to explore. And I love the way that you appropriately delivered little nuggets in your story history along a timeline chronologically. I mean, there's some really critical sticking points. Now, I want to go back to the very beginning.
Hmm.
Um, what you mentioned resonates with me on a few different levels. Number one, my fiance is Italian, and I come from a very small family. She has the traditional massive Italian family that's spread all over California, and almost everybody's a longshoreman. I mean, it's stereotypical to a T in many contexts. And it's so funny because as they are devout Catholics, and because divorce is so taboo in the culture in many contexts, what I find so refreshing and fascinating is that you were able to identify something that your parents did, and very few couples do in general, but particularly parents on the brink of divorce, finding that means to have an amicable separation, and that translating to a mindset and a belief for you. And I think what I find so beautiful about that short story is the fact that one, and I'm also curious, when you garnered that awareness, because I'm sure that at 3, 4 years old, it wasn't something that was conscious, but I also believe that many of the traumatic events or events, what could be perceived as traumatic events in our childhood, are things that do translate to our adult behaviors, beliefs, value systems, and often unconscious modes of operation. So for you, when was it that you had that epiphany where you were reflecting back and looking at how your parents navigated that particular situation, and you thought, wow, this was actually an incredible gift and really valuable lesson?
Zach, I think I might just always have been a value guy. Because again, I must have been around four, I think. So they got divorced. Couldn't tell you the time of year they got divorced. But one of their pitches to me was double Christmas. And am I allowed to curse on this? Can I curse
Yeah,
on this?
sure.
I said, shit, okay. Well, maybe not when I was four, but I was like, shit, okay. Double Christmases. I'm in.
Yeah.
So again, I was a little, obviously it was a little bit older once we had better conversations about this,
Mhm.
but they shared with me their overarching goal was to make sure my life was the best life it could possibly be. Even though they did not love each other anymore,
Mhm.
they liked each other enough to
Mhm.
raise me. And that's what they did. They were at baseball games together, basketball games together, even though I was horrendous, like a step above embarrassing.
Mhm.
That all my drumline performances, they were always there
Mhm.
together. My mom got remarried when I was 10, 11, 12, something like that. And
Mhm.
my dad gets invited over for Thanksgiving. My dad got remarried
Mhm.
and they're all invited over for Thanksgiving sometimes. Now they ended up
Yeah.
moving away, but still, what an unbelievably amicable relationship that they ended up having where they could all be in the same room at the same time. So again, going back to the beginning, I think I just might be a bit of a value guy. I'm a pretty
Mhm.
rational, pretty logical. I'm
Mhm.
Italian, so I can be emotionally expressive, but that doesn't mean my emotions necessarily dictate my actions all
Yes,
that
yes.
much.
Mhm.
So I think their pitch to me was the value for you as an individual is going to be better if with us apart than us lovelessly together. And
Mhm.
I received that message even at as a young age, and I think I just got it.
Mhm. Yeah, there's two things that are really interesting that I hear there. There was one that's subtle and implied, which is, they both liked each other enough to be able to manage that challenging time, that period. But I think that's also built on a foundation of mutual respect. And I
Hmm.
think that respect is something that we have to carry into um, any negotiation or strategic conversation, whether it's with a child or in a leadership role in business and sales. And I think that respect comes from a place of genuine curiosity and also service, among other things. I'm also, there was something that you said that I found really intriguing, which was when you were with the first organization that you were with, and you were learning the art of negotiation and working your way up the ladder to the role of consultant. You had said several times, like, I knew I had to stay here. I knew I needed to be here, even though at times it felt like taking a step backwards. I mean, a promotion with a decrease in pay. And what I find really interesting about that is, to me, what I'm hearing is that there was some part of your conscious or unconscious mind that realized, I'm getting more value here than maybe I'm being paid for. But what I am getting paid in is knowledge. What I'm getting paid in is education, wisdom, experience. And you leaned into that and surrendered to the fact that with time, I will garner the skill sets to be able to develop and curate my own programs, to take something that is being done well fundamentally, but find a way to potentially do it even better. And I'd love to hear you talk a little bit more about that experience, the patience that was necessary, because that can be very frustrating. And I would, anecdotally suggest that the younger generations don't have a lot of that patience today. So, what was the internal dialogue like as you were going through that time? I mean, I heard a lot of it, but I would love to have you just
Yeah.
to explore that further.
I knew what I was experiencing there, and I knew that was an unbelievable fit for me.
Mhm.
It checked off every single box I wanted to have as an individual. It allowed me to travel around the world. It allowed me to present and teach and talk about something really interesting for me. Now, I thought that recipe was going to be tech company, but it ended up being consultant. And now that I think back on it, I did spend a year in between starting Aligned and leaving that last firm. And I got really bored working with one company.
Mhm.
So for me, working as a consultant and I get to dip my toe in hundreds of companies with
Mhm.
thousands of people's experiences and roles and ages and cultures and demographics, like that's intoxicating for me. I love perspective and nuance and yeah, a little bit of the performative nature of getting in front of a stage and presenting stuff. Like that's cool for me. I like that. So I knew I could get that there. I had to
Yeah.
stay in order to do it.
Yeah, no, that's incredible. I mean, I respect the amount of patience and fortitude that it takes to stay in an environment when you have those feelings. And I felt very much the same. I spent 17 years as a multiple business owner, had the opportunity to go work side by side with some of my superheroes, some of the most successful people in business and industry in the world. It was an incredible experience, but I always had that internal itch where I'm going, I'm not meant for corporate at
Mm.
least to be underneath the corporate umbrella. I enjoy being a part of it, but I love the diversity of working with countless people, countless different businesses, different cultures, products, services, and being challenged in new ways because it's just about perpetual growth. I mean, it's expanding my worldview and perspectives and allowing me to become that much more influential. I mean, and really across context, which I think is a neat gift. Now, I want to ask you something that some listeners might find a bit polarizing, but I'm not asking it for the sake of polarity. I'm curious about your thoughts and opinions on something in particular. And let's, being a parlance of the times, like, Trump's doing some really unique things in office right now. And what he's doing is exposing people to his particular style of negotiation. I mean, inviting the news into the Oval Office when he's having the meeting with Zelensky. And I specifically remember, is it Kevin, for one of the guys from the Shark Tank, the ball, Mr. Wonderful. Anyway,
O'Leary?
yeah, Kevin O'Leary. Thank you. Yeah, he specifically said, a lot of people, what they don't like about what they're seeing is, number one, Trump's doing something unique. He's pulling back the curtains. He's allowing people to see what negotiation looks like. And he goes, the problem is a lot of people don't like to see the way the sausage is made.
Mm.
And I thought that was a really fascinating comparison. And what I'm curious about is your opinions on that exposure. And then also maybe some more of like the tactical elements of approach. Like, obviously he's a very polarizing individual, and it's not a judgment. It's just an obvious awareness in society right now. Um,
Yep.
and I find a lot of beauty in the things that he's doing. And I'm curious what your take is relative to his particular negotiation styles and strategies, and also making the decision to expose that to the greater world.
Yeah. So let's talk about his style. This has been his
Hmm.
style for decades and decades and decades. We
Hmm.
break negotiation down into four key types, and each type of negotiation will require a different mindset to be successful.
Hmm.
You can bargain on the most transactional end of negotiation, and there's partnering on the most collaborative end of negotiation, but there's some nuance in between. So let me break it down for a second, then I can give you an overarching view.
Yeah, that sounds great.
So bargaining negotiations exist when there is finite amount of value on the table. You're typically dealing with 1 to 3, maybe 4 different terms. Could be price, volume, delivery time, and I don't know, payment terms.
Mm-hmm.
You have a saturated market of options and alternatives, and your intent is one-off. Bargaining tactics require the mindset of a hunter. You're going to use things like opening aggressively, hold strategies and moving in ever decreasing amounts. You may use things like power statements, bullying, and intimidation tactics because there's a finite pool of value, there's a saturated marketplace of options, and your intent is to burn and turn. Because the truth is, I can be super aggressive. My credibility doesn't matter terribly that much. Because if I don't get this car at this price, I can walk down the street and do another one. Those are bargaining tactics. Partnering is the opposite end of the spectrum, but sometimes partnering negotiations to be slightly less collaborative than what we call creating negotiations. So you have bargaining, trading, creating, and partnering. Okay. Partnering, you have 10 plus different core terms. Sometimes it's dozens. You have a market that is scarce, i.e., we are much more interdependent on each other for success. And our intent is being embedded, multi-year agreements, working with each other for a really long time. The NBA Players Association and the league take a principled approach to negotiation because they are partnering together for 5 to 7 years. The player's success is the league's success is the player's success. They are interdependent. The areas in between are trading and creating. Creating is highly collaborative, value generative for both parties, multiple terms, a marketplace that's a bit smaller, and an intent that's either reoccurring or embedded and strategic. And then you have trading, a little more finite in the value, smaller pool that you're working with from a terms perspective. You want to grow some of that value, but you still want to tilt it in your favor. It's slightly more distributive. Mm-hmm. All of those different types of negotiations require different strategies, different mindsets, different approaches for different outcomes. Mm-hmm. That's how we look at negotiation in a very, very small nutshell. Mm-hmm. Although we look at terms, marketplace, and we look at intent, relationship is a bit like a multiplier. If I have a combative or non-existent relationship, I will never leave trading as a negotiation type. If I have an incredibly trusting relationship, I never need to bargain because we trust each other enough to share more information. I'll pause there for a second. Okay. Trump's approach is a bargainer's approach, which means he likes to deal in limited complexity. He likes to take highly aggressive positions. And if you look at him throughout his career, pre-politics and in politics, he has a burn and turn mentality. If he doesn't get the result that he wants, he simply exits that relationship as soon as humanly possible and opens aggressively and to kick off another relationship. The benefits of a bargainer strategy is if you are in a perceived or legitimate power position, it allows you to dictate the terms. The consequence of a bargainer's position is if you are in a less powerful position, legitimate or perceived, or you're dealing with someone that has roughly equal amounts of power, perceived or legitimate, or the strong constitution to hold out with bargainer's tactics, they are incredibly short term. So the challenge he faces will remain to be seen is these are, from a negotiator's perspective, short-term tactics. And if you're doing that on a larger geopolitical scale, you may look around at some point and say, I don't have any other people I can negotiate with credibly because I've taught everyone to bargain with me. Now, the benefit he has is he has the largest economy and the largest military behind him. The consequence of that is if people aren't willing to play ball and they exit that relationship, he may not have as many fruitful or collaborative trading partners at some point in the future. But again, this remains to be seen. Other approaches, what we would recommend more of a trading or creating approach, will allow more options to be explored and potentially negotiation partners that are much more willing to play ball, because now you're dealing with heads of country, heads of state, heads of industry, that they themselves have their own ego and they don't want to be perceived as weak necessarily. So now we have just people bargaining with each other. I don't know what geopolitical climate it will create in the long term, But obviously, we've seen the benefits of collaborative and open trade agreements throughout, tens of thousands of years of human history. We haven't seen someone negotiate like this at a large geopolitical scale. So it remains to be seen whether or not bargaining tactics are going to be fruitful or not.
Mm-hmm. Do you believe, I mean, if we're looking at his overall toolkit, his utility belt, his bat belt, so to speak,
Yeah.
while we know that's the predominant tool, do you believe that he has the resources and accessibility to lean into some of the other areas that may be more advantageous or beneficial? Do you think he's going to adopt his strategy relative to the market and whom he's negotiating with, or is he going to fall back on what he knows and has worked for him, historically?
My gut tells me he's what, late 70s, early 80s.
Hmm.
This is just how he negotiates. Like this is his thing.
Hmm.
Sometimes it works for him. Clearly, he became president of the United States twice, right? It clearly worked for him in those
Yeah.
areas.
Yeah.
But he's also bankrupted 6 businesses.
Hmm. Hmm.
So again, and he's also renegotiating a lot of the contracts he negotiated his first term,
Hmm.
which is also interesting. So again, these are bargaining tactics. When they work, they could work overwhelmingly in your favor when you're in a significant, legitimate, or perceived power position and you're
Hmm.
dealing with limited complexity. They work really well.
Hmm.
That's not the realm he works in here.
Hmm.
So there is minimal evidence that he's open to much more of a collaborative yet assertive negotiation style because he hasn't had to use it or he doesn't use it often.
Hmm.
There's also really interesting. You talk about the bringing in the reporters and showing negotiation. It's a bit of preconditioning for the market. It's performative in nature, of
Hmm.
course, as well, by telling everyone, I'm going to hard bargain with you.
Hmm.
Um, so that again could be benefit because he's telling people I'm going to be assertive, I'm going to be extreme, but the consequences are also, well, I'm just going to present my own extreme version to you when I negotiate with you. And now we're battling egos, which from a negotiation perspective limits your results.
Hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. One thing I'm curious about is if there is any kind of the evolution of negotiation. Is it historical, chronological in nature? Is it almost like we have evolved from, let's call it the Trump, the baby boomer era, where it was more of the hard-nosed traditional trading and bargaining, and the evolution as our overall, I mean, hopefully EQ has grown as a society is now moving more toward, at least in a healthier environment, moving more toward the collaboration side of things. So is that a parlance of the times? Is that overall socioeconomic awareness? Where are you seeing that evolution? What's the birthplace of that evolution?
So I'm going to take this answer in a slightly different direction, but I'm
Please
going to come
do.
back to
Hmm.
it. Let's talk about like economics for a moment. Not economics in
Hmm.
the sense of I failed calculus, but like economics and like what governs power.
Sure.
So you have humans, we've been around for millions of years, right? We've
Hmm.
finally congregated in groups larger than 100, 150 because we have some sort of shared narrative we can spell with each other. Finally, we open up trade routes. But for millions of years, up until thousands of years ago, the number one resource I have is strength. If I have a larger military than you, I have more power than you. If I can physically beat you up, I have power. So my negotiation fallback plan is I'm just going to have the biggest army.
Hmm.
Thousands of years ago, it started a transition. Right now, we had large economic and trading blocks coming out of China, coming out of Rome, eventually coming out of the UK and Spain and Portugal. Now we have economic powerhouses that, yes, they have navies and fleets and armies, right? Like Roman Empire, the sun never sets on the British Empire. Well, the sun never set on the British Empire because they own all the trading routes. So
Hmm.
they own
Yeah.
they own the economics around it. They own the
Hmm.
economics around the world. So then it transitioned from power, physical strength to economic strength, trade. And they kind of oscillated back and forth for a while on that. Then you have the Industrial Revolution in the 1900s, and you have now gas powered cars. So what becomes the new power around the world? What becomes the new economy? Oil. If I have oil, I have movement. If I have movement, then I can impact trade and militaries and whatnot. So now you have oil is becoming the big economic source for people. So it was that for a while. Then you have the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, and now it's data. Data is the new power. If I can control data, I can control everything else because I have the best information. Now it's attention. I could have crappy data. I could have no oil. I could have no physical strength. I have no economic powerhouse. But if I got your attention, I have power. So as you look at all of these different like factors and how that impacts each one of your negotiations, we can go back to like just for a moment the performative nature of what President Trump is doing. He's trying to dictate attention. So if he can get all eyeballs on him, he can then dictate the narrative, whether true, false, anywhere in between. It fundamentally does not matter. Because if I have your attention, I can control the narrative of the discussion. So it allows him to anchor, it allows him to control the reference point. But again, I don't know if these are going to be long-term solutions.
Sure. Yeah, that's interesting. Where I would love to pivot now is taking a step back and exploring your overall mission. Because what I find so interesting about your approach is the idea of making these tools, this skill set, these resources more plentifully available to anybody and everybody. Because you've worked with some really large and prolific organizations and teams. Now, what was the drive, the motivation to make this more accessible? Because I hear a great passion and enthusiasm for working with the larger organizations, but I also hear that you just love to teach in general. So when was it that you made that decision to go, I want to create something that is actually accessible for everyone? And who is the everyone that really is your ideal client? What is the question that they're asking themselves? When might they look and go, I need to look up Mark and pursue education in one of his courses or programs? When is the most appropriate time or stage or thing that they're, challenge they're going through? Is this something to develop, before they run into the problem? Or are most people looking when they're like heading into a negotiation and trying to brush up on some new tactics and strategies? Like, give us some background on what you've created.
Yeah. Our big mission was effectively to rebrand negotiation. So think about the conversation we just had about Trump's style, right? That can be a really that can be a really explosive conversation for a lot of people. And it's important for us to try to talk objectively as possible to understand what the situation or conflict is in a non-emotional way. And then we can create our opinions on whether or not we like the style or not like the style.
Sure.
So I feel like, going back to parents getting divorced and having uncomfortable conversations, it's really helpful for everybody to have uncomfortable conversations, because a activity like negotiation helps you when you're in middle school, kind of navigating friendships and navigating growing out from your parents a little bit and creating your own personality. It helps you when you're in college. It helps you when you're in your everyday life, at your current job, with your spouse, with your kids. Negotiation is such an important skill, and it happens to be a skill that people don't like.
Yeah.
They think it's manipulative. They think it's secretive. They think it's a necessary evil. And a lot of people are like, get this damn thing off my desk. I don't want to deal with it anymore. And to me, I found this beautiful topic where people can talk about their interests and use that to get through conflict, or at least under a mutual understanding for each other. And it's too important of a skill to be perceived as a thing old white people do in suits. You know what I mean? Because that's the perception of it. But the reality is everybody negotiates all the time. So we wanted to create a business that helped people understand that negotiation is not beating each other's heads in. It's about getting aligned. And if we can communicate with each other with clarity and assertiveness and being nice about it at least twice, we can solve a lot more problems. And we can still likely get the same outcomes we're getting, but the way in which we get there can develop really fruitful and positive relationships where I can be assertive and I can be aggressive, but at least someone mutually respects what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. So that was kind of our overarching mission. We want to make negotiation approachable for people and easy to understand. So that means if you're a large business and you've never been trained in the skill of negotiation before, we can help you be clear, assertive, and nice twice. So if you have a large supplier relationship that needs to be repaired, or You need help with succession planning to get better negotiators deeper into your organization from a hierarchy perspective. You're trying to lower your cost of goods or repair different aspects of different deals, and because you're going through a merger. Those are all reasons to reach out to us from the business side. And on the consumer side, we have video series and video lessons. We do public workshops all throughout the year as well, where people can sign up and learn about the skills of negotiation. And that could be real estate agents, because we have a session coming up on May 1st for that want to learn more about negotiation themselves as an individual. It could be parents. It could be individual contributors. It could be, again, college students that need to know the skills of critical thinking and problem solving and communication. All of those skills are really important for pretty much every single person. And if you come to Aligned, we can support you either on the consumer level, individual level, or as a large organization. So it doesn't really matter. We don't care who learns about negotiation, because we think it's a skill everyone needs to learn.
No, I wholeheartedly agree. And what I love and really respect about what you've created is alluding to the transformation that you're trying to create around the association that we even have with the terms, and naming your business Aligned, I think was absolutely brilliant, because it comes through in all of your communication. I mean, throughout the entirety of this conversation, there's a strong sense of conviction, yet genuine presence and respect and appreciation. And I have to imagine that that's something that you carry into all of your conversations. And I also love that you're pointing out the fact that regardless of whether we want to admit it or not, or label it that way or not, we are negotiating in all of our interpersonal relationships, as well as business relationships and beyond. And you also said something that I think is fundamentally very important that most people do not have awareness of, which is, what did they do if they don't want to have a hard conversation? They just avoid it. And the problem is, if we avoid hard conversations, if you don't tell your spouse that you have an unmet need, if you aren't having conversations with your kids about the decisions that they are making and strong morals and values and ethics, whatever the context might be, then we are carrying around some kind of weight, resentment, animosity, stress. We're starting to bottle up other emotions that will not serve us. So there's actually a health component to learning these strategies, because I think a core element of what I'm both hearing, witnessing, and seeing with you is the emotional intelligence piece. Yes, you got to learn the strategy and the tactics, but you also have to learn to manage yourself first. Because you can know how to say all the right things at the right time, but if you're, a tea kettle that's about to boil over, it's not going to matter, right? Like, so I really love that. I mean, if you would talk a little bit more about that specific element, how do you approach, or maybe what tip might you have for the audience as to how do they start to learn to control their emotional state and well-being when entering any kind of negotiation or conversation?
So our belief is that there is no such thing as miscommunication. It does not exist. There's misunderstandings and there are misinterpretations, but you communicated, whether you liked it or not. You said something, you did something, you shared something.
Mm-hmm.
When we talk about communication, we talk about intent and interpretation. When intent and interpretation are equal, that is effective communication. When they're not equal, it's a misunderstanding or a misinterpretation, ineffective communication. So what we do is we help people first, what is your intent? And second, what is the absolute best way you can ensure that they interpret it the same way? I'll give you the exact moment where I created this formula and we kind of coalesced it around the team. Yeah. So I was working at a previous firm. I was doing a presentation to 3 VPs and our COO at the time. The 3 VPs were bought into the presentation and kind of already knew what it was. So I was more or less pitching to the COO, totally fine. I had like 45 minutes an hour, whatever it was. So I'm up there kind of doing my dog and pony show, presenting. He grabs his phone. He checks his phone for a moment, puts it down and looks up. While he was checking his phone, my intent was to be respectful. He's the COO. Give him a moment to check his email. He's the only person that doesn't know this information. Once he put his phone down, I said, all good? Cool. And I kept doing my thing. after that presentation, I go into the other room. My VP was in the room. He goes, dude, what the hell's wrong with you? Like, why did you do that? He's furious. I'm like, what is he furious about? Like, what did I do? He goes, why'd you pause? And I said, well, I don't know. He was checking his phone. He seems like a busy guy. I just thought he was checking his phone. He's like, oh, he didn't interpret it that way. He's furious with you. I then knew my intent did not match his interpretation. So what did I do? I walked over and went into his office. I said, hey, I think there's a bit of a disconnect here. Here's what I did and why I did it. I recognize you might not have understood it that way. Can you help me understand like what you interpreted? Because that was miles off of my intent. I was only able to do that because I have a general belief of just use your words. To the best of your ability, communicate what your intent is. Even if you kind of fumble through it, even if you talk in circles, communicate your intent. Because sometimes that does not come through. There's plenty of people out there that get incredibly uncomfortable on the inside and they try to break tension with a joke. And they throw that joke out there and the other person says things like, you're not taking this seriously. What the hell's the matter with you? Meanwhile, now they're even more uncomfortable because they tried to break the tension. It 100% backfired on them. And now they're literally screaming on the inside. It's purely because they were unable to articulate their intent effectively. And their intent may be, hey, listen, I'm super uncomfortable with this. I need a kind of minute to reflect on what we're talking about. Can we take a break here and maybe revisit this later? Which would be a completely sensible thing to do. So overarching theme here is effective communication happens when your intent matches their interpretation. The reverse is also true. There's plenty of times where I get that text message with limited context and I interpret it in a way that wasn't their natural intent. So the reverse is also true.
No tonality. Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So not only should you think about what is my intent and how are they going to interpret it, vice versa, I will then think about what is the communication style or type that best allows me to land that intent. You know, if I know someone really well and we've had a million conversations, I can text them something controversial and they know how it sounds. Yeah. If I don't know you and I text something controversial or curt or blunt, they don't know what it sounds like. So the intent is harder to understand. So that's our kind of a general philosophy is, one, use your words. Second, think about intent and interpretation and whether or not they match up. By taking a big deep breath and thinking about that, you'll be able to kind of cool the jets internally and better communicate so there's no misunderstandings.
Yeah, you know, it's amazing the power of a breath. And thank you for that answer too. That was very eloquent and well said. But I mean, it's amazing the power of a breath. Like 7 seconds, I think it is, to calm, or just to begin the process at least of calming our sympathetic nervous system. But most people go and allow themselves to respond when they're still in that state of fight or flight. And that 7 seconds can feel like an eternity, but in reality, it's going to be a lot more productive than starting from the other position. And you know, I also want to highlight something else that you just said that's to ensure it's not overlooked, because I think this is so incredibly important, is when you recognize that there was a miscommunication or misinterpretation, a disconnect between what was said and what was understood. You did something that, again, most people wouldn't do. So before we talked about you lean into uncomfortable conversations, when you recognize that there was a disconnect, you went in to ensure that you got everybody on the same page, that there was clarity. And that's another example of a great uncomfortable conversation, but also leading the next step. And there's a huge piece of this, which I also hope everybody hears, is what all this ties back to is effective leadership. These are skills that we can use and should be utilizing as a leader in every area of our lives. And whether we want to say it or put that label to it or recognize it or not, everybody's a leader in some aspect of their life and well-being. Yes, you may not be the CEO, but you are still leading your day-to-day decisions. You are still leading your children. I mean, in every single way. So I really want to acknowledge everything that you just said, because there were so many powerful yet subtle insights, as well as the very direct, strategic, and tactical. And you know, as we wrap up today's show, this has been incredibly insightful, Mark. You know, I would love to understand, you know, I want, if you would just share a little bit more, because you talked about it, but I don't know if I just didn't catch the whole service suite of offerings. Is it my understanding that you have both courses, So it can be kind of do it yourself at your own pace and digestion. And then I thought I heard you say you also doing live workshops, which can be somewhat niche dependent, like you're doing one for real estate agents here soon. And I'm, a huge, one of the reasons I'm coming back to this too is because I'm a huge believer in the power of immersion. When I want to learn something new, I'm trying to bombard my subconscious and conscious mind with as many different inputs around that a particular area of knowledge that I'm seeking as possible. So I will do the course, which oftentimes leads to the live experience because there's nothing. It's one thing to have that fun, intellectual understanding of the thing. It's a whole nother thing to have the practical where it's built into your nervous system and it becomes more second nature. So there's the immersive experience. You're detaching from the environment, focused on that thing. What does that picture look like for you? What is that suite?
Yeah. So we started our business on the B2B side. Obviously, we're opening up a B2C side of the business as well. So if you think about it from a curriculum-based approach, we have a video series. We use all the exact same camera equipment as the company, Masterclass, incredibly well produced. You can find it on alignednegotiation.com. All of our suite of services, our course catalog, everything you can find on alignednegotiation.com. So our video service is for everybody everywhere. And then we have a fundamentals, intermediate, or advanced workshop. We predominantly do this for organizations we work with. You can kind of get an understanding of the different level and experience within each. Fundamentals is a one-day workshop, teaches the fundamental aspects of negotiation, also appropriate for pretty much anybody. Then you have the intermediate, depending on your years of experience and your commerciality, 2-day workshop. And then we have the advanced, kind of builds on the skills of the intermediate as a progression, 2-day workshop as well. We do tons of video feedback, tons of case studies and scenarios, and so on. Outside of what we consider our core experience, video series through the advanced, we do refresher work, we do sales kickoffs, we do coaching, which is like dial a negotiator, we do consulting, which is project-based, and we're also investing significantly in community, AI, tools, and frameworks as well. So a whole suite of services. We are very much your negotiation educator first, because we want you to be the best possible negotiators you can. And when you need a resource, you reach out to us and we can continue your education or continue coaching you or consulting with you on specific deals, of which we do often as well. But predominantly, reach out to us. We have a core suite of negotiation workshops you can take from full immersion to light touch.
Oh, that's amazing. So, and what I love about what you're doing again is bring both the intellectual, the training, the wisdom, the education, the understanding, and you guys are pairing it with the actual integration. And I want to emphasize that for anybody learning something new, and I mean, this can oftentimes ironically be the step that's most often overlooked, is the conditioning element. It's the exercise. It's the utilization of the skill. We can't just learn something and then magically become an expert at implementation. We have to go through the process of integration and practicing and refining and honing those skills. And you guys have put together a really comprehensive suite across contexts, interpersonal, life, and business, and put that together in a way that's easily digestible. So I really love what you guys are doing. So incredible stuff, Mark. Thank you. Now,
Yeah, appreciate it.
Absolutely. To our guests, audience, thank you guys for spending your time with us on the Perpetual Growth Podcast. And a big shout out to Mark Mirra for bringing so much value to today's conversation. Mark, if you would, just one last time, reiterate for our listeners where they can get in touch with you, learn more about your products, enroll in one of your courses or workshops.
Absolutely. Reach out to us at hello@alignednegotiation.com. Visit alignednegotiation.com, or of course, check us out on LinkedIn, Aligned Negotiation, or you can reach out to myself, Mark Mirra. Feel free to connect with me. We post content all the time on LinkedIn, little videos, thought pieces, articles to get a drip feed of all negotiation related topics right on your LinkedIn. So reach out to us again, alignednegotiation.com.
Amazing. And we'll make sure that we've got all of those links in the show notes for you guys so you don't have to search or find anything. Now, if this episode sparks something for you, don't keep it to yourself. Make sure to share it, subscribe, leave us a 5-star review to help us reach even more people on their growth journey. And remember, growth doesn't happen by chance, it happens by choice. We'll see you next time.